There is a major change coming to Star Citizen in the missions and contracts that you take. Starting back in 4.3.2, players have been able to visit job boards for specific contracts, and while this is a limited first test, the game overall has been moving a bit away from the mobiGlas and will start to present new opportunities in the game world. The ultimate form of this initiative is Mission Giver NPCs. They have existed in the game for years, but they've been broken. Today I'm going to show you why they're so important to Star Citizen's content, why they're making a comeback right now, and how they could end up working long term. And by the time you watch this video, there is a good chance our first will already be in game. This is my October 2025 supporter exclusive. Stick around till the end if you want to learn more about how you can support us and get early access to these videos. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. I've made jokes in the past that we gamers can't read, but that really gets to some folks, so I'll just say this. In a video game about immersion and interactivity, it really sucks to get all your tasks by reading your phone. And it's been like this for years. Many players will jump into each patch just to open the contract manager, see if there's anything interesting, and then move on till the next update drops. This is a problematic approach on its own, but it's only possible because everything you did in this game was picked from a pretty uninspiring list. Then the ASD facilities, featured in the ASD narrative arc, were introduced in 4.2, and for the first time players could move through a scenario of objectives, contracts, and gameplay that had nothing to do with your mobiGlas. You could use it to find the locations, but the actual whole gameplay loop was made for players to just kinda stumble into in the future. Even then, the narrative was light. It was the start of a trend that is currently changing the game, but it still didn't have you feeling all that connected to the game at the time. On the other hand, characters like Lucas Baramsko and Arkin Malor were popping up as talking heads guiding us through mission chains throughout the year. This had been a refreshing change after 7 years of primarily text-driven missions, but it still wasn't the holy grail of interactivity. It's been a welcome change that goes even beyond the legendary Tessa Bannister though. Then, finally in 2025, there was Wicklow, the alien everybody loves. He was added to the game as the first legitimate mission giver AI in over 6 years, but he wasn't a legitimate mission giver. He was a test case for mechanics in the game like collection-style contracts, turning in items to a location, exchanging a list of goods for something else, and comms calls. Because just like the others from 2025, we still don't meet him in person. He's a talking head, and while he invites us into his shop to pick and choose what we might want, he isn't actually there. It's still not up to the level of that 2021 Pyro gameplay demo we saw. But that's actually kind of good, because if he was in person, I think he would probably get murdered by now. People hate this dude. But as I mentioned, this shop was the first place we could pick up a mission. Since 4.3.2, you can go to the location, tap on a board, and get the objectives to create the item you selected. A common quest type in other games, it can be an amazing engine for gameplay in MMOs, and I do think it'll be applied to various individuals at various factions. It's a big step forward, but that doesn't change how difficult Wicklow has been for players due to design changes, functionality, and the reward structure. Besides instability making his rewards possible lost causes, he encourages players to grind for rewards that would be best pursued over the course of weeks, if not months, in days. Inherently not his fault, people feared losing progress or their rewards quickly after a new patch dropped. It's just that time in the game's life cycle, but it still made things rather tense. He also hasn't felt personal and connected to the players. He's the sole source of this type of gameplay, which has soured his name in players' mouths, and the content he provides does not have a lot of features specifically backing it up. What I mean by this is when you go out to run the contracts he's incentivizing, things will always be different for each player, and subsequently they aren't straightforward to most players, like how to get to the things you need to collect, or where those things might even be found. This could make for some amazing times in a sandbox environment, but this sandbox is still under heavy construction. Star Citizen feels lonely. Yes, partially because of the social tools that are still not here, but also because interactive NPCs have not been. Even after more than half a decade, our first steps back have been talking heads on phone calls. With the arrival of Nyx, it's time to take the next step, not only by bringing in a mining and industrial focused contract provider in the new asteroid base of Levski, but to bring the other mission givers with their own existing mission chains back up to the standard we need for more localized gameplay. Let me tell you about both of them here.
There we go, beauty. And like pot out.
The first planetary landing in Star Citizen was pretty cool to see. It was still a very experimental and uncertain time for the game, a time when all those systems actually couldn't really function. No, seriously, Planet Tech wasn't in player hands until after over a year later, and mission givers barely ever functioned consistently. At the time, nobody knew how far things like Planet Tech might come. It was also at this time that we had met our first mission giver, Miles Eckhart, somebody you can find in Lorville actually right now. He was a security contractor who sent you on missions that eventually led to his betraying you to claim what you found. It was your typical CitizenCon demonstration, only at Gamescom. And it used missions honestly we could see right now. Locate a black box and turn it in, assault a facility and get what's left. Nothing fancy, but it was acquired through your physical meeting with the character, talking with them, hearing from them during your mission, and then ultimately meeting a conclusion with them afterward. There was an arc, there was an opportunity to direct the conversation, however small it may be, and there was a reason to care about what you were doing. These things have been missing from the game, but they did exist through Miles and the others, Clovis Darnley, Tisha Pacheco, Wallace Klim, Konstantin Hurston, and Ruto. These original 6 were the first interactive NPCs in the game, Ruto being a bit of an edge case, and they all still exist. Each of these characters brought a little flavor to their own location, lore into the game, context into the world, and personality to the factions they belonged to. They hinted at reputation and a living, moving game universe, and due to the struggles of the game's servers, they've been left without maintenance to fulfill that, in many cases not even responding to players anymore. Without the persistence of the game's stability, or the narrative-focused developers who had actually been pulled off to work on Squadron 42, everything was instead sent through the mobiGlas, either as a mission or a dynamic event instead of these mission givers, and this whole segment of the game has been put on the back burner for over half a decade. But that's the story for a lot of Star Citizen's most ambitious features and systems. I mean, server meshing, the Maelstrom system, engineering, the dynamic economy, physical cargo. A lot of these concepts couldn't make it before, and some of them still aren't here now. Now that the foundation has been rebuilt on top of server meshing though, those ideas are finally starting to breathe again. It is not a coincidence that mission giver stuff didn't start happening until after server meshing came into the game. The 4.0 experimental phase of their return has been solely focused on persistence, and not really much else. Wicklow was brought in to help track missions across time, reintroduce comms calls, to build out a mission giver unique location, and to start what I think was the construction of a new archetype, the shopkeeper. Characters like Wicklow, in my theory, will be scattered throughout the factions of Star Citizen, offering specific rewards and unlockables to players who both earn reputation with their faction and are able to obtain the script that goes along with it. It could be a bit of a stretch, but I feel it lines up with a lot of their comments regarding these mechanics in the past. So, Wicklow represents the latest in an experimental phase for the Narrative Missions Initiative. While the implementation has been fairly rough, I do think a lot of that has to do with the lack of diversity in the archetype and supporting gameplay, as well as the inconsistent persistence of the game. But with those problems solved, I think he proves a model that can scale really well for the game. And that brings us back to where things go from Wicklow. The next step in this experimentation is a proper in-game mission giver. With the back-end stability finally in place, the persistence able to track mission progress, and the narrative team very clearly able to devote time to the PU again, our return to Nyx seems like their chance to really double down on narrative now. We can see it developing in the storylines, from the Van Duel to the potential of terraforming taking center stage. They aren't really shying away from a narrative approach. With Recco Battaglia already being the first mission giver after Miles we had seen, placed in Levski, focusing primarily on mining gameplay and having friendships with the Miners Amalgamated faction and the People's Alliance of Levski, CIG would kind of be silly to not capitalize on this. And I think they will. We already know a mission giver has been in the works as reported by the August and September monthly reports, and I'm sure those signs will continue. What's up to question is how well is she integrated into the game? While the narrative of the old mission givers was nice, generally missions were still the same as others you could just find elsewhere, just with a different paint. There were a couple of greats, but I think they need to stand out a little bit more than the older mission givers did. While Wicklow uses script for his earnables, I'm not sure if they're going to implement that with Recco or the other shopkeepers or other mission givers in this next iteration. There also hasn't been much talk of reputation development in the monthly reports, so I'm not sure if that'll be something we see. And there's still the major hanging question of how they will be using instancing when it comes to mission givers. Is the tech needed before the first one can be implemented? And my favorite question, how out of date are all these questions going to be by the time this video goes public? Recco Battaglia and the return of the mission givers represents a pretty big moment for Star Citizen that's not coincidentally tied to server meshing's improvements to the game. It reminds me of cargo gameplay, originally just about some meaningless tiny boxes that were made to go between two specific locations. Cargo hauling now includes loading times, box sizes, stability values, exterior and interior loading, loading mech suits, tractor beam ships, multiple handheld tools, events devoted to the profession, interstellar contracts supporting it, and more on the horizon. Mission givers were similarly existent as a basic iteration before the game was ready. And like cargo, I hope we see it expand just as much to give more choices to players in new directions. The resource rush of 2025 was the first time I felt that players could start identifying with in-game factions and elements. And with the ongoing vanity phase of the content we're seeing nowadays, we're primed to start seeing some real faces and dialogue that reflect that. Tying that to mission progression through NPCs like Recco could be the basis for a lot of players' time playing Star Citizen, even more than some of the spaceships. Wicklow was just one step in the process of building different ways that we could get contracts in the game, whether from job boards or by receiving them straight from an NPC. And Recco Battaglia in the Nyx system is the next step. At the time of writing this in October, none of this is fact, and it's all just my speculation, but everything seems to point towards it, and I think if CIG can take the next steps forward with Recco that we talked about here and further build on what they've done with Arkan, Wicklow, and the others in 2025, the verse is going to start to feel a lot less lonely. Today's video is sponsored in part by our supporters. You guys are pretty cool. You make it possible for me to still make these less news-oriented videos that don't quite perform as well on YouTube. With your support, not only have I been able to keep making these videos I enjoy, but you've made it possible to produce our various podcasts, videos, and live streams, host our org, and live our life. So as a thanks, I like to publish a video like this every month that releases publicly later in the year. And you can also join the podcast live if you'd like. Come hang out in our Discord chat room, get behind the scenes access, and at some levels add your referral code to our code randomizer under each video. If you'd like to join, you could sign up below through Patreon for $3 a month or here on YouTube. Thank you so much for making this possible, and thank you all for watching this until the end. I hope you learned something new in this one, and I'll catch you in the next.